The Gallipoli Campaign of 1915 and 1916, also known as the Battle of Gallipoli or the Dardanelles Campaign, was an unsuccessful attempt by the Allied powers to control the sea route from Europe to Russia during the Great War. The campaign began with a failed naval attack by British and French ships on the Dardanelles Straits in February and March of 1915, and continued with a major land invasion of the Gallipoli Peninsula on April 25th. Involving British and French troops as well as divisions of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. Lack of sufficient intelligence and knowledge of the terrain, along with a fierce Turkish resistance, hampered the success of the invasion. By mid-October, Allied forces had suffered heavy casualties and made little headway from their initial landing sites. Evacuation began in December 1915 and was completed early the following January.
With the war stalled on the Western Front by 1915, the Allied powers were debating going on the offensive in another region of the conflict, rather than continuing with attacks in Belgium and France. Earlier that year, Russia's Grand Duke Nicholas appealed to Britain for aid in confronting a Turkish invasion in the Caucasus. In response, the Allies decided to launch a naval expedition to seize the Dardanelles Straits, a narrow passage connecting the Aegean Sea to the Sea of Marmara in northwestern Turkey. If successful, capture of the straits would allow the Allies to link up with the Russians in the Black Sea, where they could work together to knock Turkey out of the war. Spearheaded by the First Lord of the British Admiralty, Winston Churchill, the naval attack on the Dardanelles began with long-range bombardment by British and French battleships on February 19, 1915. Turkish forces abandoned their outer forts, but met the approaching Allied minesweepers with heavy fire, stalling the advance. Under tremendous pressure to renew the attack, Admiral Sackville-Carden, the British naval commander in the region, suffered a nervous collapse and was replaced by Vice Admiral Sir John de Roebeck. On March 18th, 18 Allied battleships entered the straits. Turkish fire, including undetected mines, sank 3 of the ships and severely damaged 3 others.
In the wake of the failed naval attack, preparations began for large-scale troop landings on the Gallipoli Peninsula. British War Secretary Lord Kitchener appointed General Ian Hamilton as commander of the British forces for the operation. Under his command, troops from Australia, New Zealand, and the French colonies assembled with British forces on the Greek island of Lemnos. Meanwhile, the Turks boosted their defenses under the command of the German General Lehmann von Sanders, who began positioning Ottoman troops along the shore where he expected the landings would take place. On April 25, 1915, the Allies launched their invasion of the Gallipoli Peninsula. Despite suffering heavy casualties, they managed to establish 2 beachheads, at Helles on the peninsula's southern tip, and at Gaba Tepe on the Aegean coast. After the initial landing, the Allies were able to make little progress from their initial landing sites. Even as the Turks gathered more and more troops on the peninsula, both the Palestine and Caspias fronts. In an attempt to break the stalemate, the Allies made another major troop landing on August 6 at Suvla Bay, combined with a northwards advance from Anzac Cove towards the height at Sari Bair, and at divisionary action at Helles. The surprise landings at Suvla Bay proceeded against little opposition, but Allied indecision and delay stalled their progress in all 3 locations, allowing Ottoman reinforcements to arrive and shore up their defenses.
With Allied casualties in the Gallipoli campaign mounting, Hamilton, with Churchill's support, petitioned Kitchener for 95,000 reinforcements. The War Secretary offered barely a quarter of that number. In mid-October, Hamilton argued that a proposed evacuation of the peninsula would cost up to 50% casualties. British authorities subsequently recalled him and installed Sir Charles Munro in his place. By early November, Kitchener had visited the region himself and agreed with Munro's recommendation that the remaining 105,000 Allied troops should be evacuated.
The British government authorized the evacuation to begin from Suvla Bay on December 7th. The last of the troops left Helles on January 9th, 1916. In all, some 480,000 Allied forces took part in the Gallipoli campaign, at a cost of more than 250,000 casualties, including some 46,000 dead. On the Turkish side, the campaign also cost an estimated 250,000 casualties, with 65,000 killed.